What a race in the streets of Chicago. A historic weekend for NASCAR. But was it successful? Should we return? And what does this win mean for NASCAR? Let's break it all down in this new episode of Above the Yellow Line. The winner on Sunday, of course, should not shock anybody because of his street course experience. However, I think this winner was highly underestimated due to this being his first ever Cup Series start in NASCAR. He's making history in more ways than one, winning the inaugural race at the Chicago street course and becoming the first winner in the Cup Series since 1963 to win in his debut. It's Shane Van Gisbergen for Trackhouse Racing, and this is a back-to-back win for that team as well. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen's win is major in many ways, but I want to start off with Trackhouse in general. They started this Project 91 venture for fun. They started it to see what superstars across the world in motorsports could do in one of their stock cars. And right now, it's successful. I know Shane was like, heck no, I didn't think that we had a shot at winning when I signed up for this gig, but here we are. And I wonder how big this is going to be for that seat, just how many responses and how many inquiries they're going to get to fill that seat from drivers all around the world. So this is major in getting those people into the car and spreading NASCAR's global appeal. Kind of what I mentioned, the global appeal for drivers across the world, it's also a global appeal to fans. Shane is a very well-respected and loved driver in Australia, and I'm sure all his fans back home were cheering him on and were probably watching this race, and watching him win was major. This is probably their first time watching a NASCAR race, and we'll get into the impact that this had on Chicago and our country in general, but just focusing on Australia and across the world for right now. Especially with the Le Mans entry that NASCAR put in and with the races that we've already raced around the world before, but we're starting to push that envelope more and more as of late, or I guess I should say as of this year. So really exciting to see what NASCAR can do globally and if we can bring in a little bit more of an audience that way. Something that I also wanted to mention too is that Shane did say that he has one more year in Australia and then he might be coming here and racing if there's an opportunity available. So team owners, definitely dial in on that. I don't know if he was serious about it or not, but if he wants to race in a stock car, I am pretty sure many team owners and teams would be happy to have him filling a seat if one is available. Like I said, I'm going to get to the greater impact of this race as a whole in our country, but for now, let's go over to the results. In second place, Justin Haley. This is their first top 10 finish for that 31 team since Darlington. This is also his best finish of the season, and I will say I expected AJ Allmendinger to be the Kaulig driver that finished within the top 10, but today that was Justin Haley, and he tried to hold off SVG. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him, but he was able to hold off the third place finisher of Chase Elliott, which I gotta say, holding off Chase Elliott on a street course, road course, that's tough to do, so great job to Haley. It's a day that I think he was a little disappointed in because the win was so close, he had a chance. This could be his only chance to get the win this season, but I'm really proud of the run that they had. Kaulig should be proud. 2 good weekends in a row, I think, for them, so pretty solid. Like I said, third place, Chase Elliott. Very consistent. This is his third straight top 10, and he has to be consistent because of his points situation. He really, at this point, should just win to get into the playoffs, but there is a mathematical way he makes it in on points if he's able to get 10th place or better in the rest of the races that we run in the regular season. Kind of the same thing I said with Justin Haley. I feel like Chase Elliott let one slip, but I also recognize that this course really depends on track position, and we'll talk about the racing product a little bit later. But at that point, I'm like, we don't know if Chase Elliott is going to have another good chance to win. I know we still have the Indy Road Course, Watkins Glen. Atlanta is next week. That's a good track for him too. But you never know if you're going to get caught up in someone else's mess, if you're going to have issues during the day that plague you and take you out of contention to win. This was his shot to win, especially when NASCAR announced that we had 75 laps to go in the race. And some drivers decided to pit before that, expecting that call, and some drivers decided to stay out. Kyle Busch, for instance, who also finished in the top 10, their team was hopefully assuming that no other team figured out that NASCAR might cut the race short because of nightfall. And they ended up getting a top 10 finish because of that. So Chase Elliott might have missed out on one, but I think he has some opportunities to win going forward. It just depends on luck at this point and keeping himself clean on the racetrack. No mistakes, no errors. So that is Chase Elliott in the third position. Fourth place, Kyle Larson. Fifth place, like I said, Kyle Busch, fighting back from an interesting start to the day. Sixth place, Austin Cindric. We have to talk about this because this is major for that team. This is their first top 10 since Circuit of the Americas. That was the 6th race of the season. We're now on the 22nd or 23rd race of the season. So major for that team, especially the caliber that we would expect a Penske car to run at. He has had an abysmal season, I would say, just straight up. I don't mean to be rude with that, but it has not been the season that I think that team has hoped for or has expected. Of course, he did not get any stage points during Sunday's race at Chicago, but he did get a good finish, which I think is a morale boost for that team, and hopefully they can carry that with them because there are some good tracks coming up for Cindric. Again, the road courses, I think he's going to do well at Atlanta. We know he's decent at super speedways, so that cutoff race at Daytona, he's in an interesting point situation as well because of how iffy his season has been. So I think this could be the start of an upswing for Cindric, hopefully. If not, this is going to be an interesting season for them to look back on. In 7th, McDowell, which is not a surprise to me since he is pretty decent at road courses. It carried over to the street course. 8th, Joey Logano. He had an interesting start to the weekend, practice qualifying, but was able to make it into the top 10. 9th, Ty Gibbs. And 10th, Chris Buescher. Something I have to note, because we talked about this a lot last week, was the lack of Ford performance these past few weeks at these races. I know we have 2 Ford wins from Logano and Blaney, but otherwise they're not finishing out races as well as they should. Well, this week we have 4 Fords in the top 10, which is better than what we had last week, which was 0. So good job, Ford, for picking up the pace at Chicago. Of course, looking at our point situation following this race, because a non-Cup regular won this race, that means that the points don't change that much. We did have a switch between Bell and Blaney, and Buescher and Keselowski just swapped places above the cut line. Around the cut line is where I want to start focusing because things did change quite a bit. Last week, Bubba Wallace was over plus 30 to the good from the cut line. Daniel Suarez was just above that by a little bit. Now, after this race and the days that they had, Bubba Wallace's buffer cuts in about half, and Daniel Suarez is now below the cut line -6, while Ty Gibbs moves up +6. I had a good feeling he would have a good weekend this week, as we talked in the Above the Line live stream last Thursday, and he showed it. He was consistent, he had the result he needed to have, and a rookie is going to potentially point their way into the round of 16. That's really impressive. McDowell moves up -10, Allmendinger is -24, and Alex Bowman, who was right below that cut line after Nashville, now moves to 20th in points from 17th, -26 to the good. Of course, Alex Bowman did not finish this race. Unfortunately, that's why he slipped so far in the points. As for his teammate Chase Elliott, he is now 55 to the good. He moves from 25th in points after Nashville to 24th in points following the Chicago street course race. So something to look out for. If you're about 20th and above in points, you are really close to the guy in front of you. So seeing your way into the round of 16 on points seems reasonable there. Chase Elliott being -55, 24th in points. That's still a sizable gap, but again, he's going to have to be consistent, or I suggest they get a win to get their way into the playoffs. So those are your point standings following the Chicago street course. Now for the race rating, and we're going to have a large discussion about this because not only does this involve the racing product, but it revolves around how the race was perceived as a whole, because that was the big shtick for this race. There seemed to be a lot of doubt behind it, a lot of negativity around racing in Chicago, and I think as the week went on, a lot of us who were thinking negatively about the race ended up switching over to the positive side of things. Of course, there was a lot that we can't control, but I want to start off by saying first, there were 3 things I wanted out of this race. I mentioned this in a video I put out on Friday. The first thing is I wanted a safe event, and as far as I know, we had that, which is great. The second thing I wanted out of this race was a good fan reaction, and the third thing I wanted was a celebration in the fountain, the Buckingham Fountain. We did not get that, which, I mean, fair, it rained all weekend. I don't think anyone would want to. I don't know if there was access to do that. But the thing I want to focus on the most is the fan reaction, the fan reception. How did we feel? How did those at the track feel about this race in Chicago? The crowd reaction. First off, I want to say, I know not everybody in Chicago was happy about this race. I know not everybody in NASCAR was happy about this race. But from what I heard, from what I've seen, not only just from the crowd reaction on camera, because that is the loudest crowd I think I've heard at a NASCAR race in forever, in a long time. I'm thinking back to like the early 2000s races that we had where you can still hear the crowd, maybe mid 2000s, stuff like that, 2010s. But it's been a while since I've heard a crowd that loud at these races during the race, not just during the victory lane celebration, but during the actual action of the race, reacting to everything on track. That was exciting. So the fan reaction was fantastic, and I think the fan reception, even leading up to the event the week of, just the hype and everything NASCAR had set up to promote this event was so positive and was received so well. And I will say props to NASCAR too, because they handled a pretty much impossible weekend weather-wise. I know I'm blaming Mother Nature on pretty much everything this weekend that went wrong, because it was rain, there was standing water up to people's ankles, the lightning delays, and people getting confused whether the race was canceled, whether it wasn't. It was a very big weekend that just went wrong in the regard of weather, and NASCAR took an uncontrollable situation and did the best they could with it, which I really appreciate. I know calling the Xfinity race early before halfway is pretty unprecedented. I mean, just not pretty, it's very unprecedented, but that's the only thing they could do to get the Cup race in later that evening. I think also cutting the race to 75 laps as opposed to 100 is also what NASCAR needed to do, so we did not have another New Hampshire situation. A lot of discourse online was like, okay, well, shouldn't we have run until we should stop? And then NASCAR says, all right, 5 to go, and then we're calling it. I personally am not a fan of that. I like when NASCAR kind of sets a hard stopping point so we know what to expect. It's not just we're waiting things out. With rain, sure, we can wait things out a little bit until the rain gets harder, then we pull the cars in, then we declare a winner. But I think we have kind of a set time when lights are out at the track. We have a set time when the sun goes down, so let's make it a set stopping point. So with that call, I do agree with NASCAR, and I commend them for doing that. Now, I'm going to take a step back. Anytime NASCAR has gone to a new track, it is never going to be perfect. Anytime any sports organization goes to a new venue, a new track, whatever it may be, it is not going to be perfect the first time around. You can only plan for so much. Then when you're in the real situation, you learn things. And as we continue to go back to these street course venues, because I'm pretty sure we're going to be going to others, maybe 2024, 2025, whatever it may be, we are going to be prepared for the future. Now, do I think we should go back to Chicago? Absolutely. I think the crowd, like I keep saying, received it so well. They were welcoming. They really embraced the sport. And I think, and I've been seeing online, we have a lot more lifelong fans of the sport because of it. It was a great market to tap into. NASCAR was already kind of in that market, so it wasn't a huge risk. But bringing the sport to the city, I think, was such a fantastic idea after everything and after all the skepticism and everything like that. I think it was a fantastic idea. And I think, too, this opens the door for NASCAR to look at other markets, other venues to host a street course. I will say with that, though, my only stipulation is if we're going to another street course, we have to lose a road course, because I think if we add more street courses and road courses to the schedule and we start to weed out these oval courses, our classic 4-turn courses, it's going to create a lot of controversy. And for me personally, I still love the ovals, and NASCAR's foundation is really built on that. So I want to keep that in the schedule. But I'm not opposed to adding one more street course if we have 2 next year on the schedule. But I do think if we're able to stay in Chicago, I think we should. Maybe it's an awful opinion, but I think after this weekend, that experience was really for the fans that were there and at home. We felt the hype as well. It was a very interesting race. The NBC broadcast booth did a good job breaking down the action, making sure us at home understood what was going on. There was chaos. I will say, though, it was chaos, but it was overall a great event. In terms of the racing product itself, turns 2 and turn 6 seemed to plague the drivers a lot. Of course, there were other turns that caused issues for drivers, turns 4, even turn 11, but my God, poor Noah Gragson, he could not get turn 6 figured out whatsoever. We mentioned it on the broadcast, but making that a Wendy's dedicated turn next year, if we go back, I think Wendy's sees it as the perfect marketing opportunity. So that really plagued drivers a lot. We saw drivers spin out in practice, qualifying, go to backup cars. Heck, Chase Elliott went to a backup car and was able to finish 3rd. So it's just how the strategy, how when NASCAR called the race, how everything ended up working out during this weekend. I will say, too, with the track being a little slick due to rain, it also made the racing a little bit more entertaining. These drivers were trying to find the limit of their cars, how fast they could push their cars before they ended up spinning out due to the lack of traction. That for me was fun to watch too, and if we didn't have that issue, I do not know if the racing would have been as entertaining. Because really, if you think about it, it was really a single file race the entire time. That's kind of what the Xfinity Series won. And then, of course, when they were like, hey, we're probably going to call a race, drivers started pushing in a little bit. With the Cup Series, though, you saw more drivers take chances on side-by-side action into turns that we otherwise would have thought you could not pass. And I'm thinking turn 11 is a really iffy one to pass in, but some drivers tried to make it work. And I commend them for that, to try to make this race interesting and also to try to just get positioned themselves, because they knew as well as we did, it was a track position race. If you started in the lead, you had a good shot of finishing this race in the lead, unless there was a caution, pit strategy, whatever it was. I think there was really good action between like Bell and Reddick kind of swapping for position. Even the fight at the end with SVG versus Haley kind of swapping back and forth for the lead. So there were times that you could lose the lead based on another guy behind you making great passes. But it really was a follow the leader type of train race, which is kind of what I feared because this track is so narrow, but I also understand because this track is so narrow. For the racing itself, based on everything I said, what I saw, I'm going to give this race a 71%. Street course racing I'm learning it. I'm definitely learning it because I haven't watched a whole lot before, unless it's IndyCar or maybe a Formula One race, obviously. But for NASCAR, it was a really interesting experience. Obviously, if I could rate the success of the event itself, the success of it, 99%. The racing product, I think I'd give like a 71%. So closing it out there, those are all my thoughts on the Chicago street race. I know I talked a lot. I talked a lot about my thoughts, but I want to hear from you what you thought about the Chicago street race, from the product that we saw on the track to just the event overall. Let me know in the comments below. As you might know, this weekend I went to my first IndyCar race at Mid-Ohio, so pulled double duty on Sunday. Great job by Alex Palou. He continues to smoke the field, way ahead in the championship standings, so congrats to him and his team for winning a great podium with Scott Dixon and Will Power in the mix as well, those veteran drivers, so that was really cool to see. Big shout out to Steinbrenner Racing or Andretti Steinbrenner Autosport for hosting me during that event. It was really cool to be able to go behind the scenes. I'll be posting more about it this week as the week goes along, but major thank you to them for their hospitality and kindness, showing me the ropes to IndyCar. It was a really, really cool experience that I will talk more about again on social media @_TaylorKitchen_ on Twitter and TikTok, and @AboveTheYellowLine on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Also, during our live stream on Thursday, we're going to be having a guest on that live stream as we preview the Truck and ARCA race at Mid-Ohio and the racing for Xfinity and Cup in Atlanta. That live stream will be on the TobyChristieCom YouTube channel Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure to join us. We're also going to recap Chicago, so it's going to be a busy stream, lots of talking points. But you all, thank you so much for joining this episode of Above the Yellow Line. Thank you for supporting this channel. Give us a like, give us a follow, share this with your friends and family. Thank you all so much, and until next time, I'll see you. Bye. Want more great motorsport content? Make sure to click the videos on the screen and the links in the description.